So thanks so much, everyone. It's always, a real treat to be the last presentation of the day. But the good news is, I know this is actually going to be really fun. We've got a really dynamic panel. It's a really interesting topic, and I'm really excited that we get to share it with you guys. So my name is Danielle Graff. I am a partner with the law firm MLT Aikens. We're a Western Canadian firm. I'm based in the Winnipeg office, and we're a large area of our practice is in the ag space. We like to call ourselves Western Canada's Ag Innovation Partners. So one of the things we've done as part of that is partner with the EMILI organization. I'm very proud of that. So it's my pleasure to be here today to moderate this panel. And I will ask just the panelists to introduce themselves really briefly, and then we'll get into the fun.
Guess I'm up here. Good afternoon. My name's Dan Lussier. I'm the Director of Agro-Food Data here at EMILI. We'll talk a bit more about it, but I lead a number of projects, notably a project called the Canadian Agri-Food Data Initiative, which is focused on trying to get good information into the hands of growers and other folks working in the sector around data governance and other issues like ownership and privacy that, frankly, people often have a lot of questions about. But I think there are some good answers, and it's just an area where we need to generate more conversation and engagement so that good technology finds its way into use. So we'll dive a bit deeper into some of that, but great to be here today.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Keena. I'm the Managing Director at EMILI here based in Manitoba. We've been around since 2016, and at the super highest level, our work is to accelerate the adoption of new technologies into agriculture and think about impacts on farming, the whole of the agriculture industry and the people that work in the industry. So happy to be here today to talk about a couple of the things we work on.
Yes, my name is Rutherford. EMILI actually has an initiative where they have the Canadian version of a smart farm, Innovation Farm. The Innovation Farm is actually located on our farm at Koroscil, Manitoba. And I guess as we go through this process, we'll describe a little bit of our purpose in the whole thing. I guess I can say that we've been early tech adopters. And one of the reasons that EMILI is at our place is that we've actually accumulated, I guess it's pretty well 12 years of a complete data set of every operation on our farm. So if you look at ag tech and a lot of the projects that are revolving in EMILI, they use our data set to expand on it. So that's one of the reasons they're at our farm, and I'm going to turn it over to Leanne, who's the manager of EMILI at our farm.
Rick, thank you for introducing me. I'm Leanne Koroscil. I'm the Innovation Farms Manager. So my role is to oversee and manage all of the projects that we take on at the farm, from field to computer to all around the whole season. So it's a great time, and I feel pretty lucky to be able to do it. I'll pass it back.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. All right, so let's kick it off. Jacqueline, if you wouldn't mind kind of setting the stage, telling the folks in the room who may not be familiar with EMILI a little bit about the organization and the work that EMILI is doing to advance digital ag.
Sure, sounds good. So at EMILI, I think I mentioned, founded in 2016 here in Manitoba, and back then our founding principles were really around how can we support the industry, farmers, other businesses in agriculture to make informed decisions about adopting and integrating new technologies into their operations. And the other guiding principle was around how can we make sure that people have the skills that they need to engage and play a meaningful role in an evolving digital ag industry. And those are continue to be two major thrusts of our work. How we work on them has evolved over the last number of years, including with the creation of this Innovation Farms initiative that Leanne and we will share more about over the course of it. But that's been a really important evolution of our work to be able to test new technologies in a commercial scale setting on a real farm at Rutherford Farm. Everyone's familiar with test plot work. That's an important part of it. But for us to be able to support the proving out of new technologies and do it in a commercial space has really made the difference for how we're able to demonstrate how they work in a Manitoba farm and a setting that looks like operations that are familiar here in Manitoba, but also to be able to return feedback back to innovators about how their technologies and innovations are performing and making a difference for farm operations here in Manitoba. So that Innovation Farms is an important piece of EMILI's work. We do other things like what Dan mentioned around the Canadian Agri-Food Data Initiative. You may also be familiar with some things that we do around skills, work integrated learning, and seeking to get more people from more backgrounds into the ag industry.
So let's dive in a little bit on kind of one of the aspects of this. And so, one of the kind of core drivers, I think, of technology and innovation, and one of maybe the limiters in the ag space historically has been access to data. So clearly, data as an input is of critical importance. I know, Dan, obviously you do a lot of work in that space. Do you want to tell the crowd a little bit more about kind of why that's important and the pieces you're working on and how that's important for producers as well?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, data is really at the center of making a digital technology valuable and helping it create an opportunity for those farm businesses. So, Rick mentioned how they made early investment, have been at it for a solid 12 years now. It's very unusual. Lots of growers are in transition, and I expect that's going to continue over many years as farmers make investments progressively in both new technology and new skill. And that's really why we talk a lot about accelerating digital agriculture is really both on the technology front, but equally on how people are using those technologies to acquire data to then inform their business and take it forward. So, that really drives our thinking on this as we have to play on both sides of that. Mm-hmm. And it feeds into putting data and thinking about data as at the center. I was recently did a few presentations to a group of younger farmers, and the center of that talk was really around that data planning is farm planning. So if you want to get something out of your data, you got to think about integrate it with the rest of your farm planning activities, which means starting early, linking it to things you're doing, starting with the end in mind. What am I going to get out of this? And then backtracking to how do I go and get the data I need to get to that point, right? So you don't just show up at the end and say, oh, now I want to do something valuable with my data. It's really going to be about integrating it slowly and progressively into your operation and linking it to all those existing field operations and steps that you're doing throughout the entire length and breadth of the season. It's not something that's going to happen in a minute, but it's something you can grow and the practice around it progressively. And certainly that's animated some of our thinking through the data initiative, is that we need to bring some of those other skill sets. So there's the farming skill sets, there's some of the technology skill sets, but we also want to bring in, goes into your world a bit, some of the even legal skill sets, mm-hmm. because growers do have questions about, say, privacy and ownership are good examples. And it's not because there's necessarily anything untoward happening, but it's rather uncertainty, a lack of current familiarity. And there's a role to play for us as well as for the ag tech community to bridge that communication gap, make sure everyone understands how data is being handled, what exactly is being done with it, so everyone's comfortable, everyone sees where value is being created, and frankly that partnership is being built between the different players in the sort of ag ecosystem. So lots more to be said there, but that sort of informs our thinking of where data plays a fundamental role. And again, thinking back to that mantra of data, data farm planning is data planning or in reverse. I think that's really a good way to sort of bring this to ground.
Sure. So then, question for Leanne, kind of build on that. So when you look at kind of that data initiative and the importance of data, can you speak to us a little bit about what that looks like at Innovation Farm and kind of what is Innovation Farm, maybe to start with, and kind of maybe build us out from there?
Yeah, for sure. I do have a short video that I'll talk about, or I'll show after I speak a little bit here, but Innovation Farms is really a unique space within the prairies. There are other smart farms across Canada, but there's nothing quite like ours and what we're doing on our farm. It's kind of been touched on throughout the panel discussion here so far, but Rick has this 5,500 acre farm by Koroscil, and we're basically hosted by the farm, so we're able to have access to leading edge equipment and technology and production practices and the historical data as well from the farm to be able to advance digital agriculture. And we do that by testing, validating, and demonstrating and showcasing some of the things that we learn on the farm with projects that are both pre-commercial and commercialized. So that can range from I actually have some projects that I can use as examples later on in the talk here, but that can range from academia being pre-commercial, other groups that are just getting started, entrepreneurs, innovators, all the way up to companies that are already established in the industry, but just validating and testing the technologies that they have in their portfolio on a farm from a field scale setting. So we really do quite a lot of work on the farm in various ways, but I think at the whole end of it, it comes down to, ROI is a huge aspect of adoption for digital tools and innovations, and a farmer doesn't always want to take on that risk. So what we do at the farm, in a sense, de-risks the adoption or the potential to adopt by being able to see what we're doing on the farm in a real setting, with real equipment, truly a real farm on a commercial seed farm. So we can offer a lot of work there, and then in regards to, you know, like the data that comes off of it, having those 10 years of historical farm data, it's over 10 years now, I keep saying 10, but it's grown for over the last couple of years too. Having access to that is really giving collaborators a unique space on the farm, but also access to information and data and metrics that are coming off of the equipment, and that can range from what date something was seeded, what was seeded, what variety, where, who seeded it, what time, did it rain, all of these different metrics for seeding, harvesting, spraying, tillage, etc. So we're really able to get a fine-tuned sense of what happened in the season, which is really helpful for various projects that work with like carbon and need historical data, or just truly like what happened last year. Really great for legacy as well, and having access to data and sharing that throughout the industry has been a really great asset of our farm.
I think that's really interesting is like too small of a word, I think, in terms of when you think of really, so like I'm a farm kid. When I think of farming, the way that farming has changed and evolved and continues to change and evolve is such a rapid pace. And we're kind of faced with all these kind of things going everywhere. I mean, I walked around the show today. There are all sorts of innovations. There are people trying to come up with new solutions all the time. Farming is changing and continues to change. So maybe Rick, if I could ask from your perspective as a farmer, why is it so important to have something like an Innovation Farms here in Manitoba?
It's kind of a big question for us in a way. And I guess being close to these people for the last 3 years, I guess now, we look at new technology on our farm, and we've adopted a lot of new technology over the years. Some have failed and some has been great. The ability now to look at some new technology and see it in the early stages and then be able to move it to our farm. And I guess one of the key things I look at farming, and I've been around for a few years on it, and I look at some of our neighbors and what they're doing, ROI is a huge part of farming today, as you would attest with everybody sitting here. And to be able to put some monetary value to some of the things we're doing, and Leanne mentioned ROI, but I guess when the first product comes to Emily, there really isn't attached to it. It's something that is in the back of their mind. Does it have an ROI? But as we move it to the farm and we can actually put dollars and cents to it, I think that's hugely powerful for our farm, and be able to purvey it to other farms. And I guess on a side that's a little bit more to what we do is we do retail seed, and the ability for us to test new products. And I always say that our success is our customer success. So to be able to share success with other farmers is a hugely powerful item for our farm.
So what is it about the concept of a smart farm that kind of drew you into the partnership? Why did you take the chance?
Well, I guess I can say it, that I'm probably looked at as an early adopter. And it comes back to the fact, and we have it on the wall in the office, that the first yield map we generated in 1997, that's 28 years ago now. And if we look what we extracted from that early map, for example, the early thing that caught us in the eye is drainage had to be improved. So, we worked on that. And we've gone through many steps on our own farm over the years. But as we look at some of the new technology that increases our efficiencies, and then farmers in Western Canada are extremely efficient people, but to find new products that help build on our efficiencies is cool stuff, actually. So, no, it's a combination of a lot of things. And a reality is a lot of things that, I'll be skeptical, because most farmers are, of products that come to us, and be able to verify it on our farm and share some of those experiences with other farmers across Western Canada is extremely powerful.
Maybe just to make a blunt point here, is like doing it here in Manitoba, right? Like a company might have a great piece of tech in Minnesota or Iowa, and that's fantastic. But the question is, it's going to work at your shop? Is it going to be relevant to Western Canadian production, soils, conditions, practices? Like that cannot be duplicated, and there's a huge role for even something that's really mature to see with your own eyes, and to have or the team here go through it and show how it actually works. Like it does not work in a brochure.
And that is Innovation Farm. It is show and tell. And there's so many things that Leanne that we show and tell. And the idea that I can sit down, and we do it almost sometimes daily, is sit and talk about new tech. And it's fun when we have it, because we can sit there and theorize a bit about what's coming down and how that fits in it. And Leanne, coming from a farm background, she gets a lot of this stuff. So it's a cool synergy that we have happening as well with bringing tech people with tech background to us and then being able to put it on our equipment. Share a story, and I don't want to take any of Emily and Leanne's thing, but at one given time today, we had one of our combines, and it was running 4 trials on the combine at one time.
Different pieces of technology, just different trials with different groups. It was a fully loaded combine.
Why don't we go into that? I think Leanne had a little short video about Innovation Farm, and then maybe we can get into a couple examples of some of the things that we're working on right now.
This is the video we'll need to play. Just pause for 1 second.
Innovation Farms. Powered by Ag Expert, creates space here in Manitoba to demonstrate and validate real-world digital agriculture solutions that will give Canadian producers the edge in a quickly changing industry.
In our first 2 seasons, we have provided space for 50 ag tech tests and demonstrations, constructed an 8,500 square foot Innovation Farm Center, provided students with hands-on experience, and welcomed more than 700 visitors to Innovation Farms. By creating space on a full-scale commercial farm for innovators to test and validate how their solutions work in a real-life setting, and then sharing these insights to inform decision-making, we de-risk the technology, giving farmers increased confidence in its capabilities prior to adopting it on their own farm.
There is cutting-edge technology and innovation happening right here in Manitoba, and the future is full of opportunity.
Nice. Okay. Well, then, Leanne, maybe over or back to you to share maybe a couple examples of some of the technology or the successful projects that were worked on this last season.
For sure. I'll just get the screen up here. The first one I want to talk about is actually, I'll give 2 examples. One is a pre-commercial project and the other one is a commercialized project. So the first one I'm going to chat about is the Gecko project here. So Gecko Strategic Weed Management, they work with artificial intelligence, historical farm data, and satellite imagery to create these maps that you're seeing on the screen here that are essentially able to look at different weed populations within a field and then be able to have more applied sprays on the field where those weeds are. So you can be as conservative or as liberal as you want with how much spray you want to apply to the field in the areas that are targeted, but they're able to kind of analyze that over a series of time and track what those weed populations might do. So on our farm, we were looking at the wild oat and kochia herbicide-resistant populations that we had. This is not the particular map from the fields that we had on the farm. This is just an example of what that looks like. But they essentially created this prescription map, sent it over in the cloud to the sprayer. It uploaded immediately to the sprayer, and then the sprayer just went and applied the spray in the field that was targeting the weeds. Really fascinating project because we're able to save a lot more money, a lot more time. We're being far more efficient with our resources by only, and you know, what did we use, Veraxer? It was Veraxer, I think, that we used in the field, expensive. You know, you're able to save quite a lot of money with that as well, and even just the labor involved. You're not blanket applying to the whole field, you're able to target those weeds and save a lot of time and money there. So really cool application that we're seeing this could be used for. It's currently used in the sprayer, but they also have a seeder application where it can change the seeding rate depending on what target areas you want to address, because then it'll be more competitive or less competitive depending on what weed you're trying to target. But we also see it in a spray drone setting. So the video you're seeing on the right there is actually a spray drone we had at the farm in 2023. It's just applying water. It was a demonstration that we had using a prescription map they had based on some, I believe they just made it up for that particular purpose. But it's maybe a little bit hard to see in the video, but you're actually could see the nozzles turning on and off and spot spraying in the field. So there's definitely a lot of applications. I know there was a lot of people in this exact same room this morning looking at Tom Wolf's and Mark Weber's seminars on spray drones and what that's going to turn into in the future. A lot of exciting work there to be had, and we're hoping to have more of a finger on it in the future as things progress as well. But really cool application with this particular project. What's really great is that because of the work that we've done at Innovation Farms, they grew from 3 fields on 3 farms to 95 fields and 60 farms, and I think that's actually even grown since then, and that's only just been in the last 2 years that they've worked with us. So because of the work that we're able to do, they're able to actually bring that product out into the wild of the industry and demonstrate what benefits it can bring there.
There, Leanne. One interesting one more interesting thing about this project for me is that when we got started working with Gecko, as you know, they were developing this technology. Now it's somewhat commercialized as they bring on customers, but they continue to iterate. Is that we were capturing images of the fields to detect or collect images for their algorithms to detect where weeds may appear. We were doing that at first with drones, fairly time intensive to have our operators out there with drones and the imagery upload and things like that. And since then, their technology has evolved to work quite well with satellite imagery and only needing a couple passes per season. So from that perspective, it's a lot less time and energy and cost intensive for farmers as well to potentially use this tech. As well, as Leanne was mentioning, now they are developing algorithms to put on existing sprayers. And so it's taking a pretty cool new software technology algorithm and being able to use it, right off the bat with existing equipment so that the results and benefits are really real for producers right away.
If I could just add a little bit about it. One of the things that I've thought about since we've been into it, because we've been involved with it for a couple of years now, that I see as a plus on a commercial farm is it lets us track the resistance going forward. I think a lot of the algorithm we used actually had 4 years of data. So the idea that you can go back and see, are you making strides to eliminate or decrease the amount of resistant weeds? And at the time I didn't really think of it, but now as I've looked at it, with his data and be able to collect data from satellite imagery and from years in the past too, that we can actually start tracking, are the methods we're using, are we being efficient what we're doing, and are we making strides within it? Or in the other fact that some of the new weeds that were coming in, water hemp per se or kochia, are they expanding quicker than we need than we know? So there's other aspects of his technology that can help a commercial farm, and if you can get to the application and see the benefit, because in reality we are seeing the increase of some of these weeds, the pre-tracking of some of this stuff I think has got a powerful tool in it as well.
And I think that sometimes these tech have like secondary effects that are beneficial, and it's like I think a common thing you're going to find over time with like data intensive technologies, they have a first order use. But then because you have quality information, all of a sudden smart people are going to find new ways to use it. And I think we're going to see, that's a good example here, but as we have tech that goes over the field, gathers more information, all of a sudden there's new things you can do with it. So, it's going to be, I think, a recurring theme. Another company that I come across recently, they do laser weeding for a horticulture application, but actually it's a data company. Because once they go over the field, they take intensive information about the soil, about other products and so on, and has other agronomic opportunities other than weeding. So it's a good way to think about it. Like there's lots of opportunities. Once you have a viable sort of data pipeline and technology pipeline, there's a whole bunch of other things that could arise and different ways it can be used. So it's exciting times.
No, I do agree with that too. And we see with a lot of different technologies that we're using today is there's a lot of synergies that come out of a lot of projects.
100%. I think that a lot of, just being able to apply it to the farm too. I often use the terms like it's a bit of a Wild West out there. There's a lot of tech that's just coming down the pipeline, and it's coming fast. And I think even just being at Ag Days here and walking around, you can see that for yourselves. There is a ton out there, so being able to actually see how it's used on the farm is such a strong benefit to bring to the industry, to be able to de-risk that the information that's shared with people, and also just like sharing how it's adopted and how it could be used to make more informed management decisions. Yeah. So I'll maybe talk a little bit more about a commercial project that we have too. So This one was pretty exciting. It just started off last season. It's more of a harvest-based project, but we had access to the Elmer's Manufacturing Hive Mother Bin. So it's an 8,250 bushel unit, very, very big. It's, well, you can see in the photo down there just how big it is compared to a semi-truck there. Pictures don't do it justice. When you're standing beside it, it's pretty incredible. But we were looking at this. This particular unit was one of 2 available in North America, so we were really excited to test it out and see what it's all about. It's essentially a portable grain storage unit. So you take it into the field. You can kind of see on that top photo there's hydraulics. It lowers it down into the field, keeps it steady. We were using it during grain corn harvest. And basically testing out what are the efficiencies thanks to having a system like this in the field. You know, we have fields that range, I don't know, what's your furthest field, 11 kilometers away or so or further? Yeah, about there. You know, a typical corn harvest starts off with maybe about 5 staff or so. You have truckers, you have grain cart operators, you have a combine operator, and then you're constantly moving back and forth between the yard site and the fields because there's such a high capacity coming through it with corn in particular. You're just constantly moving, and sometimes you can't keep up with where you're trying to truck to, etc. What we found in this particular project was that by having the mother bin in the field, you can see on that table there, actually I'll use the laser pointer here. In 2023, we had a comparable field that we used against 2024. Both were corn harvest. We went from 5 staff down to 3 staff this last year, thanks to having the mother bin in the field. The combine idle time, so how long the combine was just sitting, idling, not doing anything in particular, went from 15 to 5%, which means that we had a difference of 4 hours because this less than 1 hour, it was actually a half an hour that it was incredibly small thanks to just having the mother bin there and being completely efficient.
We actually stopped for supper.
Yeah, Rick said we actually stopped for supper, which is a rarity during harvest. Same with grain cart. You're seeing a really big dip in the grain cart idle time, meaning that it was far more efficient. You're getting a lot more usage of the time that you're spending in the field and the people that are in the field as well. So really fantastic metrics that we pulled off of John Deere Operations Center, which again kind of speaks to that historical data that we're able to pull off and the value that it brings to different projects on the farm. This was a really fantastic opportunity to be able to see exactly how the benefits that we're getting out of testing this tech on a full-scale farm, and especially in Elmer's Manufacturing is based in Altona, completely different environment. So we brought it up to the Inner Lake and were able to give some information about how it performed in a completely different region. So lots of really great benefits. And something else I could probably add on to that is that Rick, your farm is now expanding up north to a farm 2.5 hours north by Gypsumville, and having something like this available. Even we've talked a little bit about Saskatchewan and the farms there and how vast they are. Having a tool like this to just give you so much more flexibility during harvest, which is already such a pressing time, is fantastic. Just a great benefit to have in your field during a really stressful time.
And I'll just add a little bit to it. During the harvest, it was actually pretty amazing when you look at it that we thrashed a quarter section of corn in one day with 3 people. These are just amazing things when we looked at it, and even the difference of putting 3 people together versus 5 people together to harvest the same amount of corn in a day and taking longer. It was a real eye-opener. Once we got into it, we really could see fairly instantly the benefits that it would do us. In fact, during that day, the combine never stopped once for 6 hours. And before we were using 3 semi-trucks to haul out, we were just using 1. He didn't have to wait. He just came and filled and left. At the end of the day, the bin was just about full, but the next morning it was emptied and we continued on to the next field. So the efficiencies that are brought to it was a great story of an innovation with a commercial product that actually has been used other places in the world. And in some cases, Western Canada has been slow to adopt it. The other place in the world that used it extensively was actually Australia, and I worked there over 30 years ago, and they were using much smaller, but the same technology 30 years ago. And it's actually interesting that it's taken Western Canada as much to pick up to it, but Elmer's being in Australia, you could see the benefit of it, and for them to lead it is a great benefit that we had a chance to help them share the story with Western Canada.
Well, it's really interesting to see how tangible the results were. Like, this is like plain as day, you can see it in that little table. But I think another thing that I picked up on as well is the way you're talking about it, there's ROI here that isn't just dollars and cents, right? It's like ease of use, it's like slower stress, it's some of these more subtle pieces of ROI that like are real, they help your business, even if you don't necessarily go to the bottom of an Excel file and say that's X number of dollars. It like has those sorts of more intangible benefits that you need to sort of experience, you know, to get a hand, to figure out. So I think that's like one of those other weird benefits of seeing with your own eyes. It's like pulling out those intangible ROIs that may not be just dollars and cents.
Just a side story of that, we actually stopped for supper that day because we were actually doing so good and we were going to end early. So we had a chance to stop for supper. So reality, you're right on the money.
Well, I was gonna maybe ask as a follow-up. So, Rick, you know, you've seen something like this, you know, 30 years ago in Australia. So then, you know, you knew it would work theoretically, right? So why is it so important? Like, you know, again, as an innovative farmer yourself, why is it so important that you actually got to have these tangible results? And why does that matter when you're actually deciding what equipment you want to buy?
Well, I think with Western Canada, and it's no different in other places of the world, really, it's all about being competitive too, really. You know, and that's kind of the root behind it, actually. If you look at it, it's just helping competitiveness of Western Canadian farmer. And it's amazing, you know, why haven't we got down there? Well, I think Western Canada has a love for trucks. Everybody's got to have lots of trucks. So these things reduce the amount of trucks. So it's kind of a cool story in reality. And I think one of the things that's helped promote it, back in the day when I worked there, farms were far apart. The delivery to the elevator was a greater distance. So what has happened in Western Canada? The same thing. So reality is it's a coming of age for some of our tech in Western Canada, but it's, in my estimation, is low-hanging fruit. So the benefit to the Western Canadian farmer, and the cool part about it is for us anyways, we get to mingle with Elmer's engineers, you know, and we're kind of poking away at the idea that we maybe want to use one for spring and fertilizer. You know, we're always trying to stage enough fertilizer to seed a large crop. So it's something that we're chatting with them now, is using one in the springtime to stage fertilizer. So, you know, and they're kind of cool about the idea, because right away, if we can increase the amount of time we're using it, the return on that investment is going to go up.
Sure. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yes, we've talked about how it's going to rust it out, and
Yes.
we're working on it. But it's just like, you know, we were talking to the Elmer's team earlier today, and it's a full season approach. It's becoming this one piece of technology that was, or equipment I should say, it was only in the harvest time, is now growing into, it could be like springtime. It really expands the use of this piece of equipment by broadening that too. So, you know, it's really great. I think I should mention as well that Rick has so many insights into the farmer's perspective and what he's experiencing in the field, as well as Emily Laudin. I don't know if she's in the room, but the sales agronomist, the team at Rutherford Farms, like being able to see it from their perspective as well, and then expand on how that capacity can grow in ways that we didn't really even consider is always welcome too. So, yeah.
So I think, you know, obviously, when you look at the data on the screen, and, you know, having that historical data to compare to obviously helps to show the value of this type of technology. So let's come back to the data side of it, Dan. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about a little bit more about the streams of initiatives around data literacy that you're working on right now, and kind of how those might tie into what's been happening on the farm.
Yeah, for sure. You know, when we started working in and around the data initiative, it really was a combination of both some applied research where you're gathering good information and so on, and we certainly understood that you needed to get that into the hands of people through training and so on. But really over time, what we realized is just how fundamental that like last step is of getting like good information to the hands of individuals, growers, and other people who are surrounding growers. That could be an agronomist, it could be people who work in various parts of the technology space or whatnot. And really we were able to sort of reorient our thinking a bit, and think every single thing we do has to be about how do we get it to go the last mile? Like how do we get every bit of knowledge we have, that includes all the sort of innovations that we do across EMILI, into the hands of people who are doing work in the sector. And so in the context of the data initiative, what that led to was the creation of a data literacy program we call the Fundamentals of Farm Data. And there's a knowledge base online, so there's 4 modules that are posted online. You can link from our website out to those things, free of charge, no need to even register. And putting those together was really useful. It allowed us to think through all the different sort of information and ways to present it that we wanted to do. But we're not naive. We don't think that a flood of people are going to stampede out of this room and go and spend a few hours reading tonight after they maybe go for a steak dinner.
But they could.
They could. So really what we're looking to do and what we've started to do is getting out and working through partner organizations to reach people either in person or through like online webinars and Zoom and so on. And so we work to customize some of that to fit for purpose workshops. So I was out in Red Deer twice this year talking to cow-calf producers in partnership with an event run by University of Calgary. Been out with young farmers through the FCC Young Farmers Summit. There's one coming up in Winnipeg on Monday, actually. And we're constantly looking for other ways to bring that through into real places with partner organizations that are interested in these topics, and to make it dynamic and alive for those groups. Each of them has a little bit of context, but at the end of the day, some of these topics around data and data management, pretty horizontal. It doesn't actually matter that much when you're thinking about, say privacy, if it's about, say, cattle, or if it's about berries, or if it's about, canola. At the end of the day, a lot of this is pretty consistent, and we can, really customize and bring that through in a way that folks, I think, find useful. And, getting out with partners is really key, and so we're looking to do a lot more of that in the years to come.
So can you break that down a little bit more in terms of kind of what would a typical kind of discussion around that look like? Like, how do you approach that? What kind of questions are you trying to help people answer?
Yeah, a really good example to be tangible is in November, again, I was out in Red Deer talking to cow-calf producers, and we had two sessions inside of a larger workshop focused on cybersecurity. So right away, that's a topic I think that people have some sense of, but they mostly have it through maybe they see a media story about a cybersecurity incident somewhere, in society. So in the first block, we did some real fundamentals, really trying to make the point that this is something everyone should be engaged on, that you can do something even if you start today just making your passwords more robust. And that's sort of just setting the groundwork. And then in the afternoon, we went back and we did more of an interactive workshop. So sort of a tabletop exercise of if there was an incident, how would you respond as a farmer, as someone who's working in the sector? What steps would you take? Start to think through what you would do in a crisis. So if there was a ransomware event or something like that before the event, just like you do in the rest of your farm business. Mm-hmm. You don't think about how would you respond to say a fire or a flood or an animal health incident during or after the fact. You're going to have thought about that before and made a plan. So I think that's a really good example where we bring some information through and help people learn and start that journey of upgrading their knowledge. But we want to try to make it tangible and practical as well, because of course that's a really good way to learn. And whether it's cybersecurity or thinking about some of those contracts, it's another really good tangible thing that you can talk about and engage on. We've all certainly clicked online, I accept a whole suite of terms and conditions. So that's another place where you can do some learning and then get a bit more tangible as well. So I like that mode of learning. Equally we can do some other, more broadcast modes as well, and that maybe is more suited to like an online environment. But we try to make sure whatever we're doing is really meeting that audience and fitting the group that we're working with.
For sure, and you know that I love talking about ag data. So for the folks in the room who don't know, my area of practice and law is around technology, and so we get into a lot of conversations about ag data, and one that comes up a lot is around ownership.
Yes.
And this consideration of how are we making sure that the producer level data that that innovators need in order to actually be able to create these products, to create new technologies that are going to better agriculture in the long run. But how are we making sure that there's the right protections in place, and how are we making sure that there's that value along the chain? Is that something then that you would deal with as well?
Yeah, definitely. We have different roles, right?
Yeah.
You're directly working with either people who are the grower and then have maybe data they're looking to, or that they may be engaging with someone who's a technologist, or of course the companies who are looking to build products. As a nonprofit, our role is really how can we facilitate some of that communication. Right. So over the last couple of years, we've been doing a project we call the legal landscape of agri-food data, and there's a guidebook out on contracts. So that's a good grounding for folks who want to know, frankly, starting what is a contract at all, and then what do we see in these technology contracts and data use agreements. And then really in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing another guidebook. So they're built really for non-lawyers, which is a good start. And it's really centered on that ownership question, which is one of the fundamental things that repeats over and over again. As a bit of a preview, data is hard to own. It's not like real estate, and it's not like an orange or things of that nature that are physical. The fact it's copyable, can be shared with many parties at the same time, makes it just more hard to get your head around as an ownership concept. But one thing that we have heard, and if you listen carefully, both sides of that, the grower and the technology company, usually say one thing, that growers own their data, and then the question actually should be, that's really great, but how do you do that, right? And so we try to get into what the mechanics around that look like, and frankly to help people like growers understand, well, how do I understand how that's put into practice? So I think it's not easy, and people should not feel bad if they're having a hard time sort of getting their head around what it means to own data. It's a bit of a squishy concept, but our mission is really to get everyone better able to communicate, have a common language, and then people can start to advocate for themselves.
For sure.
Either they like it or they don't, and then they can start being a customer and a vendor relationship, and I think that's a big step forward.
And really kind of creating that foundation as the building block for advancing digital ag, data being so critical.
And I'm never shy to say, one, I'm not a lawyer and this isn't legal advice, but the other part of that that's important is if you have real concerns, that you can call a lawyer to get their point of view, right?
We love that.
It's a trusted advisor, right? And you may use a lawyer in another context of your farm business, but if you have real concerns about an agreement around your technology, yes, you can call a lawyer and they can give you a point of view. They can perhaps be engaged to review that contract. It's just like every other part of your business. It's just a new facet of that. And so, that's something we don't say you got to call a lawyer, but if you really have concerns, don't hesitate. Like, do it. It's worth it. And if you can put those concerns to bed, that could be really valuable to you. So.
Can I just add there that this work got started in late 2020, I think, something like that?
Yeah, the earliest business, like the earliest glimmer of this was early, yeah.
And one of the sort of precipitating conversations that led to this work was I was in this large conversation in Olds, Alberta, actually, and it was just a bunch of tech providers sort of arguing about how they each had the ultimate solution for farmers, and it became very clear that no one had the one-size-fits-all solution, and also obviously everyone was out there trying to sell their thing, as they would state that they would. And so I think an important element of this work, especially the data literacy modules and the guidebooks, is that it's coming from this nonprofit's unbiased perspective. We have nothing to sell you. It is literally for the purposes of increasing people's knowledge of how to navigate their own agri-food data and make informed decisions about how to proceed next, so that people are not learning about the use and value of agri-food data from someone who's trying to sell them something.
And I think the vendors want that too. Like what I've observed more than anything is sometimes the vendors don't know how to enter into that conversation, right? Because both sides don't quite know how to communicate on these pieces, and no one is trying to do the wrong thing. They're worried about people taking something the wrong way or feeling that something improper is being done. It's not really the case, but I think there exactly is that role for us to be part of that bridging operation. And maybe in a bunch of years that won't be needed, but now it certainly is. We're still in that digital transformation as a sector, and so I think it's an important function. And let the companies do sales and do good pitches and build great products, but we have that other role to play for sure.
To add to that, I think this is such a timely time to talk about this topic because of how many people are playing in the industry now. Like, we're not just seeing farmers and agronomists and trusted advisors, we're seeing data scientists and engineers and all sorts of different varieties of people that didn't really exist as strongly as they do now in the industry. So it's so important to be able to educate everybody from every different range of background that they have on what that looks like and what that means for agriculture and the industry as a whole.
It's a really, really important point, Leanne, because this is something I often talk about, that we have the concept of the value chain when it comes to the product, right? Inputs, farm products leave and they become food and they end up at your table. And that's a great metaphor for how value is created for the food that goes through that fairly linear process. When you look at technology and data, one, there's going to be relationships that aren't mediated by food products, right? You're going to have say John Deere, you don't sell a food to John Deere, but they sell you a technology, and then your data may end up back on John Deere's servers. So that's a new relationship, and it creates this more multidimensional, I call it the ag tech ecosystem, or the ag data ecosystem. And so if you're a farmer, you don't just want to think, where am I buying my inputs from and where am I selling to? You have all these other technology and data relationships with vendors, with trusted advisors, and so on. So it's a much more diverse and eclectic set of and web of relationships. And so when you're thinking about who and what is doing with my data, you need to see the whole ecosystem and not just be thinking about that sort of more linear traditional value chain. There's all these other players and you have all kinds of data relationships with them. And you need to sort of at least have a map in your mind of who am I doing business with? Is it technology? Is it data? Is it both? Is it services? And that can fill in sort of the who's who in your ag data ecosystem.
Okay, so I want to make sure we spend a little bit of time talking about kind of what's happening in the 2025 season at Innovation Farms. But before we do that, I just wanted to see if there's any questions in the room for the panel. The lights are bright in my face, so wave your hand if you have questions. Okay, there's a question.
I know this might be obvious, but is there a value to the data that's sold as if it was a commodity back to somebody that cares? Like, instead of the grain, can we just sell the data?
Say something.
Yeah,
this is for me.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you from trying to sell your data, right? It's like something you could sell. That's maybe the first thing you could say, right? But in the context of personal data, going back about 10 years or so, the same question was asked. You know, with the rise of social media, there was the basic idea, what if we sold our personal data to the Facebooks and Googles of the world? Ooh, could it be valuable? They're valuable companies, why can't we get some of that value? The same sort of question that you're asking. And some really smart people across like academia and lawyers and so on really did a bunch of work there. And the end game was individuals would not have a lot of value there. Like you might get $5, but the real value that makes Facebook and Google super valuable and billion-dollar companies is because they have it from hundreds of millions, if not billions of users. So it was a bit of a disappointment, right? It was like in the end, not really a practical thing, you know, to actually go out and set up a system that could facilitate all those transactions turned out not to make sense. So I don't know, I don't have the final answer at all, but it was a bit of a wake-up call, I think, in that community because there was this belief that you could go do that and that it would be, you know, like maybe it would be $100 and that would be more interesting to an individual, but in the end it was kind of disappointing in the terms of the monetary value. So I wouldn't foreclose on it, but it's like you got to sharpen your pencil and like look at whether this makes sense and whether it's worth your time.
Maybe I'll try to put just a slight practical farm twist to it. If I look at our 10 years of data, and if I was in a position to sell my farm tomorrow, I could purvey what I did on every acre for 10 years, building our fertility background, the chemistry we used. I think for a farmer sitting in here, if that's what you're looking at, that brings a lot of value to your farm if you can actually demonstrate what you've done to it. One thing that we get into in that thing is carbon footprint and what we've done on the carbon side. How does that relate to your organic matter? So be able to have the backup of what we've done on every acre, I think as we go forward, and if carbon really is something that the world wants to pay for or the elimination of it, farm data has a big play in that area.
I think we're going to see increasing value in different types of data sets. And so, you know, fundamentally it's going to matter how big is your data set, what's the quality of your data set, and yeah, like what's the applicability of it and who's willing to pay for it. So there's a lot of market questions in that, but you know, the classic lawyer answer is it depends, but it's not outside the realm of possibility if the data set is of the right size, I would say.
In some ways you might already be selling your data.
And that's the other part, right?
I don't mean in a weird way,
no.
but like if you're you're using Climate Field View, for example, I'm not picking on Bayer, but maybe I will just name names. Yeah. Climate Field View doesn't make Bayer money because they don't sell it at the fair market value of what it costs them to build it. So in a way, there's kind of like an implicit, they're giving you something, but you're also giving them data, and that lets them build the product, and you're not really paying for the product as much as it might cost. And so there is sort of an implicit bargain occurring, right? Things are being put into that product, and you're getting value from the product, and your data is part of that transaction today.
We do that all the time when we sign our scene card at Sobeys and buy groceries. A little bit of data, $10 every so often, back and forth.
Yeah, go ahead.
You spoke to it briefly there, the relationship between information generated and sharing out with farmers. It made me think of mapping and on just producing information around the mechanical engineering side of things. So could you speak a little bit more to that, like the
Maybe I'll speak first, but then Leanne, I think there might be something in here for you around how we're publishing results from Innovation Farms. So from my side, in the context of the data initiative, we've published online, it is a library of data literacy training material. So like really walks in from the very basics of what is farm data, how can you sort of think about it. We have bits on planning and cybersecurity and so on. So it's a training module. So the modules are like chapters of this larger knowledge base. We make it free of charge. Anyone can go take a look and go on their own sort of journey of learning into this space. We're going to keep publishing new materials, like on ownership and privacy and so on over time, because there's lots to be done there. But you know, and I think you're also thinking about technology, right? And so in the context of Innovation Farms, we're also going to be publishing the results of our projects. And maybe I'll let Leanne to speak to how we're wanting to do that, because I think that's another library that might be really valuable to someone who's thinking about, you know, what should I purchase and how do I go about understanding its value?
Yeah, for sure. As of just this last season, we've started publishing project summaries or project reports, just summarizing what the value was, what we saw, what happened during the season, what exactly we looked at, because we work with some projects that are like software on a computer, and we work with projects that are like Elmer's, like a full piece of equipment. Other projects are like the Gecko project. They all look super different, and so having a bit of context for what the heck happened in that project is always great. So we do that, talk a little bit about the value that it brought. That's something that it's going to probably evolve over time, and it already has. Even over the past year, we're realizing, oh, we need to include this information or take this piece out or whatever. But our website is really a great place for all of the projects we've done so far. So Innovation Farms has been around for a handful of years, and as time goes on, we're going to be building up the background of every project we've ever done on the farm on our website, so you can kind of see what happened with what groups, what years it was done, and what results we got out of it. So it will evolve, but that's the intention, is that we want to, part of our key activities that we do at the farm is showcasing and demonstrating the tech, but also sharing data and insights that we learned and garnered from those seasons that we explored that technology. So being able to share that with everybody in a public way is really important to us.
So maybe then let's wrap up talking about the upcoming season and what you guys have planned at Innovation Farms.
So very exciting times at Innovation Farms, as always. I am a little bit biased, but it also is just the truth. Hopefully some people in the room here have had the opportunity to be able to visit the farm. It's a really great place to come and see exactly what we're doing. We have lots of on-site field tours that we host throughout the season and events that we're having. Most recently, as of just last season, we had our first producer day, so specifically a day for producers to come visit the farm and not be, there's no sales pitch involved. We just want them to show or see what exactly is happening on the farm and some of the projects that we feel are most applicable to them at that time, and we change it up every year. So stay tuned. If you have like a email, then we have a really great newsletter that goes out once a month, and it talks about all of the events that we have going on, and we're hopefully going to be announcing the producer day that we have planned. I don't know if it's really like 100% yet, so I don't want to share that just yet, but we have lots and lots of plans for what we want to do with that in regard. But we also have plans for various events throughout the season, like we've had Manitoba 4R Day in the past, and we host lots of internal events, not just farm focused, but we also work on some of the different areas that we have within EMILI, so that more people from various aspects of the industry can come visit the farm and see what we do. So it's just a really great opportunity to come see what's up. And we also have a really fantastic conference in November. It's an annual conference in Winnipeg called Agriculture Enlightened. So if you don't make it to the summer tours because it's too busy, then definitely consider the one that we have in November. It's a full day conference, really fascinating material that we cover there from a wide range of speakers that talks to a wide range of audiences. So hopefully we'll see you there. I don't think I've missed anything, but come and visit us.
That's right. And this year, over those many events that happened at Innovation Farms of various sizes, half days with 130 people, 2-hour-long tours with different size groups. So there should be, if you're interested, something that fits into your schedule and your interests. And I know last year at those tours, we were promoting I think it was a $0 ticket for farmers for Ag Enlightened. So it's a good way to get your hands on that ticket for November as well.
What's the value again, Jacqueline?
I think that ticket was $3.99 by the time we were done in November. So, and also free to come to Innovation Farms for sure.
And what do folks, like, how many different types of technology can they expect to see at Innovation Farms?
Oh, it changes depending on the tour. So we kind of cater it to what the audience is going to be. So it's more for producers, then we'll try to do something a little bit more applicable to their field perspective or whatever they're really finding to be more applicable to their farm operations. If it's more academia, we might look at more of like a small plot research project, because that's their mind, is they're thinking of the stats and the randomized complete block designs, and they're thinking of different things compared to what a farmer would think of. So we kind of customize it, but some of our tours are truly like all encompassing about all of those topics, and we talk about a wide variety of things. So most definitely I would recommend subscribing to our newsletter for insights on what that is going to hold this upcoming season, because we already have some tours planned. And we are also pretty active on social media, so follow us on X and LinkedIn for more information about what's going on at EMILI and at Innovation Farms.
Great, thank you all so much. The panel, I think, will stick around if folks have more questions, but I think we're wrapping up here.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you to the members of our panel coming and sharing the exciting research that is in testing, coming down to getting ready to be implemented at field scale so producers can see what this looks like. The future is looking more and more digital. In lieu of speaker gifts this year, we have made a donation to the Manitoba Farmer Wellness program on behalf of all of the speakers. So please join me once again in thanking the members of our panel.